Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining the Talk Shop Show with Erica Aguilar, the Senior Vice President of Complete CU Services, and myself, Pierre-Jean Galland, the CEO of Complete CU Services. Today, as usual, we have a very interesting guest, Matt McGuire from the AML shop, a terrific personality as well as a great professional. So would it be safe to say, because the large banks have tons of controls, and one control which I was really impressed with the other day, I sent a wire to a partner in the States for $8,000 US. And, it's new that you can send money in other countries just online from your home. And the wire never left until somebody from the bank called me and asked me a ton of questions, but not only about, it felt like, yeah, I knew it was a lot of money laundering questions, but some of the interesting questions, like you just mentioned about the romance fraud, is how well do you know this company that you're sending money to? What do you know about them? Do you know that, do you know their address? Do you know how they exist? What type of, and I had been dealing with them for a year on and off. So I felt that was really interesting. But the other side of the coin is that we're talking about very developed controls. But in the credit union world, do you feel that there is a risk there because they're starting to open accounts without meeting the new member? They're starting to do a lot of transactions without necessarily meeting the members. So in terms of knowing your member or knowing your client and getting all that ID, is there a little bit more risk than there used to be maybe prior to the pandemic?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that there's two big responses there, right? The first is ratchet up how much certainty you can get about the identity of the people you're dealing with remotely, right? So, there are prescribed methods for, IDing somebody remotely, but then there are things that make a lot of sense in terms of figuring out who you're dealing with. There are new digital ID methods. There's new ways to get to know specifically who you're dealing with. And then the next bit that becomes super important, it's the reason largely, I think, the legislation changed to this whole idea of ongoing monitoring of business relationships and collecting purpose and intended nature of account, right? To me, Pierre, that's not about just recording and saying, listen, I'm using this for savings, right? Although the guidance would allow you to use that approach in terms of this is the purpose of the account, that doesn't do you any good. Like, the point is, without seeing the member come into the branch often and without the benefit of the conversations, you need to establish a baseline. You need to understand what normal looks like so that when abnormal happens, you can intervene. And so your point is really well taken, which is you send an $8,000 wire and you don't normally send an $8,000 wire, there should be an intervention. Similarly, when you bring on a client and you're using a member at a credit union and you're using Verifin, for instance, your opportunity there is not just to write down this is for savings, but my expected cash transactions from this person in a year is this. My expected EFTs, and then there's a system, a baseline against which to monitor to find that unusual activity and to intervene properly, which might mean investigation, which might mean calling the member. But that legislation now says that on a routine basis and commensurate with risk, you're looking at those factors and updating that information so that you always have a good view of what normal is.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. And through experience as well, in the west of Canada and the prairies as well, I've experienced some interesting anomalies as far as AML controls are concerned. But I'm looking at the biggest cash provider to the branch, and sometimes I look at it and I go, okay, there's two service stations and they're across the street from each other. One of them has no cash, and yet the other one has like 2 million per month. To me, these are like key risk indicators that, you know, things pop up. I mean, there could be a very valid reason. They could have a car wash that, you know, only takes cash, and it's a very popular car wash. I don't know, but it seems that there's a lot of systems that are available, and the tools are available, but the compliance officers or even the staff around them concentrating more on the paperwork of, you know, making sure that the LCTR is filled in properly to submit to FinTrack, and the UTR, we have all the information, rather than looking at this, you know, these big picture items that could actually, you know, provide some important insight on some high level fraud, right?
Yeah, and pure, I mean, I'd forgive credit unions because they've been trained that way. In the you know, decade leading up to 2016, FinTrack's examinations were all so mechanical. So what's been really promising has been the evolution of FinTrack's examinations, right? So it's gone from that mechanical approach to a very risk-sensitive approach. You'll see this difference in your next credit union's examination, where there's an intense focus on high-risk customers that you've designated, high-risk customers that they think you might not have designated, and what the enhanced due diligence measures have been on them. So particularly, you know, in one of the recent examinations, they spent an entire hour with a credit union on a particular client where that sort of situation where it's, you know, there's these big dollars going through the account and you've designated them as high risk. So did you ask for their financial statements to compare the revenues of that client to the sorts of deposit activity you're seeing? Does that make sense? Have you asked for that? And so that sort of incisive view is important to me. On the gas station example in particular, you know, it's interesting because commingling, mixing illegitimate funds with legitimate funds has become, you know, is still one of the preferred methods of money laundering in Canada. It attracts very little attention. When we've seen gas station disparities in cash, though, one of the interesting things, you know, when you bring in a member and talk to them about it, sometimes what you'll find is that there's a flow-through aspect to this, right? They found out that their bank will charge them $1 or $2 for every $1,000 they deposit.
I've seen that.
Whereas credit union costs nothing, right? Right, so all the cash comes into the credit union and transferred out the next day, you know?